So welcome to this session. I'm very happy to be here today. My name is Zakia Adam, and I coordinate this Sub-Saharan program with Arnaud. And today we will talk about two very important topics. We'll talk about energy efficiency indicators and energy prices. As you know, energy efficiency, it is critical to overcome the challenges facing the global energy system as we seek to ensure a secure, sustainable, and affordable energy supply for citizens of the world. That is why the IEA has placed the efficiency at the heart of the global energy agenda. And for energy prices movements, they often make the headlines, more particularly for crude oil. And this reflects their importance to individual consumers and the economy. So next slide. Before we start with the technical part of the presentation, let us quickly look at some of the housekeeping rules in order to make our session today the most effective. First, the whole event will take place in a virtual mode using the Zoom meeting platform. And we recommend you that to mute your microphones during the presentation in order to avoid background noises. If you have an urgent clarification during the presentation, then please use raise your virtual hand, and then we will pause the presentation to answer you. At the end of each presentation, there will be a question and answer session where you will have time to ask us questions. We recommend that you use the question and answer box below to write all your questions to us. And if you don't have time during this session to write questions to us, to ask us questions, then do not hesitate to write an email to Arnaud, me, or to the Africa program inbox. This webinar on energy efficiency indicators, it aims to provide the necessary tools to initiate or further develop in-depth indicators in order to support the development of effective energy efficiency policies. So during this presentation, we will first see why it is important to produce energy efficiency indicators. Then we will see what you can extract from the energy balances, and then what further data you need to build the energy efficiency indicators. We will also show you how you can collect this data. And after the presentation, I will walk you through the exercise that we shared with you already by email. And then I will be joined by experts from the Energy Efficiency Indicators team of the Energy Data Center, who will answer all your questions and have a discussion with you on the topic. So let's get started. First, let's do some interactive and warm-up questions on the menti.com website to test your knowledge on energy efficiency indicators. Do you see the Menti website? Yeah. So the question is, first connect to the menti.com website and use the code 69 28 46 and 36. The question is, what do you think when we speak about energy efficiency? This is an open-ended question. You can write whatever word comes to your mind on energy efficiency. So what do you think when we speak about energy efficiency? How do you understand it? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it and give us your thoughts. I'm just refreshing the website. Policy savings, conservation, very good. Tell us what you think when we speak about energy efficiency. Cost savings. Let's see if some more people have some more ideas of what do we think when we speak about energy efficiency. Policy, yeah. Very good. Climate change, yes. Very good. So we have some interesting answers: increase accessibility, conservation. Very good. So let's move to the modern technology. Interesting. Yeah. Less loss. Yeah. Better use of energy, least costs, modern. Very good. So let's go to the next question. What is energy efficiency? You have 4 choices of answers. Is energy efficiency to consume less energy to provide the same energy service, for example, using LED bulbs instead of incandescents? Or is it to consume the same amount of energy to provide more service? For example, you increase your production of steel. Or is it to consume less energy because you have a change in service? For example, there's an economic restructuring from heavy industry to services. Or is it to consume less energy and also provide less energy? For example, you use a bike instead of a car to go to work. So what is energy efficiency? So there's you can answer multiple answers here. So we have 5 participants who said it is to consume less energy to provide the same service. 4 others think that it's also to consume same energy to provide more service. Give you some more time for other participants also to answer. As I said, you can answer multiple answers here. So most of you have answered the first and the second one. There's one person who said it's to consume less energy because of a change in service. Another participant also think it is to consume less energy and provide less service. So let's see the answer. The answers are energy efficiency is to consume less energy to provide the same service. And it is also to consume the same energy to provide more service. So most of you had understood the correct definition of energy efficiency. So let's look at a last question. Do you think that the energy intensity of the economy, which we define as the total energy supply divided by GDP, do you think it is a good indicator of energy efficiency? What do you think? Think about it. Is energy intensity a good indicator of energy efficiency? Answer yes or no. Energy intensity it's a widely used indicator around the world. We see it in many places. Energy intensity, it's a measure of how much energy is consumed in a country to produce 1 unit of GDP. Do you think that indicator is a good indicator of energy efficiency? So most of you think that it is no. We have 4 participants that think that yes, it is a good indicator. Let's see the answer. And the answer is no. Energy intensity, it's not the best indicator for energy efficiency, but it is often used as a proxy. And this could lead to some mistakes and misunderstanding of the energy situation of a country. Energy intensity, it's a too general indicator. And for energy efficiency, we need more detailed information and data to study the efficiency trends more accurately. So it is not the best indicator, but sometimes when you don't have enough detailed data, then it's used as a proxy. So now I will go back to the presentation and I will share with you the video. Do you see the video?
So why energy efficiency is important and why do we need energy efficiency indicators? Usually when we think about energy efficiency and why it's necessary, we'll think about the reduction in energy consumption. However, there are many other benefits from energy efficiency. Here we can see what we call the energy efficiency flower, representing multiple benefits from energy efficiency improvement. Those benefits can be economic, social, environmental. For example, by increasing employment, increasing energy security, or by reducing harmful emissions. This is why many countries have set energy efficiency targets, and this is why it's important to have end-use data to track the progress of energy efficiency policies and to be able to set the correct target for those policies. Here we can see policy design samples, but also benchmarking exercises, which are an important application of this kind of data. However, there is still a very high portion of energy consumption that is not covered by energy efficiency policies, and this represents a large potential for action. Only 35% of the global energy consumption is subject to mandatory efficiency standards. And it's estimated that in Africa, only 2% of energy demand is covered by energy efficiency policies. This is why it's very important to have detailed data in order to be able to study energy efficiency trends in depth, to know the priority areas and where we stand, to set the targets, and to track and monitor the actions. But now let's see what kind of data are already available from the energy balances. Energy balances give a very useful piece of information, and combined with some macroeconomic data allows to calculate aggregated indicators, like for example, the energy intensity. However, there are limitations in terms of the disaggregation of the data. For example, in an energy balance, the residential and the services sector are represented as total, while in order to study energy efficiency, we would need a further disaggregation by end use. For example, space cooling and space heating. One of the possible starting points to identify priorities in the breakdown of final energy consumption by sector. Usually this information can be easily extracted from the energy balance of a country. So, for example, in this case, we can identify that the residential sector is the most consuming, so it's likely to be considered a priority sector for energy savings. However, we need more detailed data to better assess this. Like, for example, the consumption by end use, such as cooking, water heating, or space cooling, and the related activity data, like number of occupied dwellings or surface. Not having proper data could lead to wrong policy decisions and actions. Let's see now an example of widely used, the energy intensity. We can see a figure illustrating the energy intensity trends for different regions since 2000 to 2018. Energy intensity is commonly used as a proxy for energy efficiency. However, the indicator is too high level and includes different factors, such as the structure of an economy or the activity, besides real efficiency. So in order to study efficiency, we need more detailed data. Let's see another example where we study the residential sector trends, starting by using the most aggregated data to using the most detailed one. If we analyze the residential consumption over 20 years, shown in the graph in the blue line, we see that there has been an increase as a whole, plus 15%. However, we can see that the consumption per capita, the red line, is at the same level at the end of the period, more or less. If we go to the more detailed data indicators, for example, the consumption of energy for space heating divided by occupied dwellings or by floor area, we can see a dramatic reduction over the analyzed period. So this means that even if residential energy consumption increased and residential consumption per capita did more or less remain stable, important efficiency improvements are witnessed in space heating. The residential per capita indicator did not show any change even with the big efficiency improvements in some end uses, probably because of the increased use of new appliances, such as smartphones, computers, tablets. So all in all, it is essential to choose the most appropriate indicator depending on what do we want to observe. If we just look at the total residential energy consumption, we would observe that the total final energy consumption has increased by 15%. However, this does not mean that we are less efficient now. For instance, the residential space heating energy consumption per floor area has decreased 35%. So it's really important to choose the proper indicator depending on the message we want to give and what we want to observe. So what drives energy intensity then? The efficiency progress is one of the drivers. For example, more efficient industrial processes will contribute to a lower overall intensity. But there are also other factors like the increase of the activity, for example, the increase of population, more houses, more cars, or the structural change of an economy. For example, a country switching from the industry to the service sector, which is less energy intensive, that also affect the energy intensity. So it's really important to differentiate when improvements come from improvement in energy efficiency to track the impact of energy efficiency policies. Here, for example, we can see how energy efficiency helps to decrease the overall energy consumption, while the increase in the activity contributes to the opposite. So, what additional data are needed in order to study energy efficiency? As we have seen from the energy balances information, we can create some energy indicators such as the total final consumption per population. However, those indicators are not specific enough to monitor energy efficiency. In order to study energy efficiency and obtain energy efficiency indicators, we need end-use data or even more disaggregated data. However, the greater the disaggregation, the more data are needed, and usually this also comes with higher cost. Collecting data is costly, but enables a better design, monitoring, and evaluation of policy. Not having proper data could lead, as we said before, to incorrect decisions and actions, and as a consequence, to even higher costs. Also, in order to develop indicators, apart from energy consumption data, it is essential to also collect activity data. The activity data are sector-specific. It could be a physical production of a certain commodity, like cement or steel, floor area, or the distance driven by a vehicle. Combining energy consumption and activity data, we can obtain efficiency indicators that explain how much energy is needed to provide a certain service. For instance, how much energy is needed to produce a ton of steel. Let's now see which data we can collect for every sector. And let's start with the residential sector. In order to calculate energy efficiency indicators for the residential sector, the IEA recommends collecting energy consumption data by end use. So, for example, space heating and cooling, water heating, cooking, lighting, as well as energy consumption of different appliances, such as dishwashers or televisions. It's also important to collect data on heating degree days and cooling degree days in order to be able to correct space heating and space cooling energy consumption for the year-to-year variation of the temperature. In other words, when we analyze energy efficiency indicators for space heating and space cooling, we want to observe change in the energy consumption resulting from the energy efficiency improvements and not from the climate effect over this consumption. If the winter is harder, then it's very likely that people are going to consume more energy for space heating, for example. And we want to avoid this effect. Regarding the activity data for the residential sector, we could collect information on the number of dwellings, particularly occupied dwellings, residential floor area, as well as stocks of different types of appliances. We should also pay attention to the activity data we use for our indicators. For example, if we use total dwellings, we will also account for abandoned dwellings and secondary residences. Therefore, in order to avoid counting in efficiency empty buildings which does not consume, we should exclude vacation homes and unoccupied dwellings. And so this way we keep the same boundaries between the energy consumption and the activities related to this energy consumption. Let's now have a look at what we can do in terms of data collection for the service sector. For energy, we can also collect data by end use. So for example, space heating and cooling, lighting, other energy uses in service buildings, and also non-building energy use, for example, street lighting. We can also collect electricity and other fuel consumption data and floor area by IC categories instead of by end use. But it's also good to do for both end use and IC categories. And the most relevant activity data would be the value added, the floor area, or the number of employees, for example. The next sector is industry, and for energy, in the IEA, we collect data for 19 major I6 subsectors. And when it's possible, we encourage more detailed data collections. For example, energy consumed to produce aluminum or cement, since this data collection allows for physical indicators that are more detailed than the major ISIC categories. And when it comes to activity data, we focus on the value added created by a given subsector. But for certain energy intensive and homogeneous industries like paper and iron and steel, we can collect also the data on the physical production, such as the tons of steel produced. And finally, the transport sector. It might seem a little bit more complicated than the other sectors because here we differentiate between transport segments and modes. So segments include passenger and freight transport, while modes refer to road, rail, air, and water. Regarding the activity for the transport sector, we want to observe how much and how far we can move. So for instance, how many passengers or tons of goods we can move and how far. To measure this, we use vehicle stocks, vehicle kilometers, passenger kilometers, ton kilometers, and we calculate passenger kilometers and ton kilometers as the total distance traveled by all the vehicle stocks that we are analyzing, multiplied by the occupancy for passenger transport or by the load factor in case of the freight transport. But how can we collect all this data we are mentioning? So in 2009, the IEA members countries agreed on the new energy efficiency indicators data collection. Thanks to the cooperation with international experts, an Excel template was developed, and you can find this template already in the IEA website. And with this template, the IEA collects both energy and activity data for all the four sectors presented: residential, services, industry, and transport. In December, we published the energy efficiency indicators database and a report called Energy Efficiency Indicators Highlight, where we include all the countries that collaborate with us, not only members. We are open to collaborate with any country that would like to do so. And this report, of course, is also available online free of charge. And on top of that, the IEA has also cooperated with AFREC to develop a questionnaire for energy efficiency, particularly for the residential sector. So on the country level, the IEA differentiates four main data collection methods. And firstly, before starting any new data collection, it's good to make sure that this data is not already collected. So for instance, if you need some activity data for transport sector, it is possible that the Ministry of Transport is already has this data. So it's very important to map where all the data that I need might be located. If you are sure that these data are not available, you can start your own data collection by launching, for example, a new survey, or you can even decide for a less expensive options, which could be expanding an already existing survey. For example, adding some transport questions on a household survey. Another method is metering and measuring. That is relatively costly, but really effective if you want to measure efficiency of some specific equipment. And here we can also find, for example, smart meters, which are more and more used nowadays. And we also have modeling, which is the last of the four methods, and it can be complementary to surveys and metering or used standalone. For instance, by using activity data and total energy consumption data from the energy balances as input to estimate energy consumption by end use, for example. The IEA has developed two manuals. The first one is the Fundamentals on Statistics and provides guidance on how to collect data and how to develop those efficiency indicators. And it includes also a compilation of existing practices of data collection from across the world. And the second one is the Essentials for Policymakers, which advise on how to develop those indicators as well, and particularly how to interpret the energy efficiency indicators. Both manuals are available on the IEA website in English, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, and also French. Before starting any data collection, it's always useful to have a look at what other countries have done. For this purpose, the IEA developed the country practice database, which is a very useful resource to learn from each other. It's a very powerful tool worth consulting before undertaking any new data collection, because it allows seeing what other countries did and to take an advantage of their experience. For example, if you are planning to develop a new data collection, such as a new household survey, for example, you can check what other countries have done and even the details of that survey, the results, and even the questionnaire of that survey. And also, if you have a country practice that you wish to share, please contact us so we can make it available for others, and others can benefit from your expertise. I would like to conclude with some key messages. First of all, detailed energy and activity end-use data are crucial for well-informed and effective policies. These data are essential for identifying priority sectors and understanding energy efficiency trends and monitoring policy effectiveness. Therefore, it's extremely important to raise people's awareness of the detailed data needs and underline benefits of country-specific data collection and analysis. It's also important to benefit from the experience of other countries and organizations, as well as contributing to this. So we invite all countries that want to start collaborating with us on end-use data and efficiency indicators to reach out, and we can discuss in more detail the potential collaborations we could develop with you.
I hope that this presentation has helped you better understand the energy efficiency indicators, IEA methodology, and give you ideas of what you can do. I'll go back to the presentation, to this presentation now. And now we will look at the exercise that we have sent you yesterday by email, and we will look at the solutions together. If you have questions on the presentation that we have just done, we will look at them just after this exercise session, but you can already start writing them in the Q&A box if you want to, if you have a pressing question. So now let's move to the exercise sheet. I will share it with you now. So I hope you can see this Excel file. So this was the exercise on energy efficiency indicators that we sent you. It has a simplified energy balance for a country A for the year 2019. And you have some detailed industry data as well here that you will use to answer some of the questions. The first question was to calculate the 2019 energy intensity for country A. So we gave you the country A GDP in 2015 $million PPP, which was $4,258, and we asked you to calculate the energy intensity. I'll give you a few seconds in case you have not yet practiced this exercise. Then maybe we'll look at all the answers together in the end. I'll just tell you the questions now. The second question is about, do you think the energy intensity decreased since 2010? So above you can see that we gave you already the energy intensity for 2010, which is 7.8. So depending on your answer for 2019, you will be able to answer the question 2. And then the question 3, it's here we are giving you a set of activity data. So iron and steel production, cement and clinker production, and then the industry value added, the iron and steel sector value added, the cement and clinker value added, machinery sector value added. And then the question is, what is the best indicator that you can calculate for iron and steel energy intensity? So what is the unit and the value for each of them? And then calculate the industry energy intensity, the iron and steel and cement. And the last question is about calculating the compound average growth rate between 2010 and 2019 for the different intensities, and then analyze the different intensity growth rates. So let's look at the different solutions now for the exercise. So the first one is to calculate the energy intensity for 2019. So what is energy intensity? It's calculated as the energy required to produce a unit of GDP. So if you look at the energy balance, the total energy supply, it's 22,346 terajoule for 2019. So the energy intensity, you take the amount of total energy supply and you divide it by the amount of GDP, which gives you 5.25 megajoule per 2015 PPP US dollars. And now if you compare it with the 2010 energy intensity, which is 7.8, so did the energy intensity decrease since 2010? The answer is yes, it has decreased. But can we say that this is due to improvements in energy intensity? And unfortunately, no, we cannot confirm, we cannot say that for sure it's due to energy intensity improvements, because this decrease from 7.8 to 5.25 can be for many reasons. It can be for example, an economic shift from less energy intensive sectors to services, for example. So you need more disaggregated data on energy and activity to analyze energy efficiency. The question 3, which was about what is the best energy efficiency indicators for iron and steel. For iron and steel and cement, above we have the production numbers. So it's the preferred efficiency indicator to use the physical production in tons. So, for example, how much energy is required to produce 1 ton of steel. So the unit here for iron and steel energy intensity would be the gigajoule per ton, which gives you, here you take the amount of iron and steel consumption divided by the amount of iron and steel production. Same for cement, where you will take the amount of cement production consumption divided by the cement production, which gives you the cement energy intensity. However, for other sectors, we don't have those information, but we have the value added. And so we can use the value added, which is related to revenues and in a certain sense to the physical production as well. And so we can use the value added to make this calculation. So here for machinery, it will be the amount of machinery consumption divided by the value added, and same for other manufacturing. And for industry, it's the same. I think now you understood that you take the total industry consumption divided by the value added for industry. Same for iron and steel production. So you can calculate all this industry and iron and steel energy intensity. Having said that, using value added for efficiency indicators, it brings a noise because you have the possibility of having different prices. So how much does 1 ton of an industry product is valued in a specific market? So when comparing energy efficiency calculated with value added over different years, it's very important to use constant prices in order to remove the inflation noise. The last question, which shows you the different energy efficiency indicators based on value added for 2010 and 2019. And we ask you to calculate the average annual growth rate for each sector. So for iron and steel, you take the value for 2019, you divide it by 2010, and then you do the compound average growth rates. So you divide it by the number to the power of 1 divided by the number of years, which gives you that iron and steel energy intensity is declining by 2% on annually, on average annually. For cement, it's the same calculation, and you get it's increasing by 2%. For machinery, the intensity is declining by 6%, and other manufacturing, it's also declining. So what can we say about energy efficiency improvements in each of these sectors? So besides cement, which we see is having an increasing average annual growth rate, we see that all the other sectors, they are facing a decline in efficiency in energy intensity. And this is probably due to efficiency improvements. For example, retrofit of existing plants or the beginning of operation of new and more efficient plants. So there's an improvement in energy efficiency for all the sectors except cement. For cement, we see an increase in energy efficiency of around 2% since 2010. And this could be for many reasons. It could be because of aging plants, or other factors. For example, maybe the country was importing clinker for the production of cement, so clinker, it's the raw material, but now it's producing it in country. So you're using more energy for this production. For the other manufacturing sector, we, without further specification, it could include many different sectors. So there could be a big shift in structure of other industries, and it's quite vague. But I hope that this quick illustration of the exercise has helped you better grasp some of the notions of energy efficiency indicators work that we do at the IEA. I recommend you to calmly take a look again at this exercise. Try to do it by yourself, and let us know if you have questions. Now, I will go back to the presentation, and we can start the question and answers session. My colleagues from the energy efficiency indicators team have joined us. So there's Thomas, Victor, and Yongyu, who's here with me today to help answer some of your questions. Let me see if we have some questions already. The first question that I see in the box, and let me see. Can you tell us as the benchmark figure energy efficiency index? So I don't know if Thomas wants to take the floor, or Yongyu to.
Maybe Sakia,
Victor is here. Yeah.
Useful to clarify what are we referring to in this question. Is this corresponding to the presentation, to the exercise? I'm not sure what they are referring to, the energy efficiency index.
So I will ask the participant if in the chat box you can clarify your question. Energy efficiency index. I'm not sure as well as to what this participant is referring to.
Maybe we can also invite participants to raise hand if they want to ask a question verbally. Right. So you have both possibility. You can write in the Q&A box. If you like a question that was asked by someone else, you can do it so that we can see it's an important question for more people. But you can also raise hand and we can give you the floor to speak. So you have experts at your service right now, so feel free to ask any question.
Please, Mr. Bizwa Yehu, if you want to take the floor, do not hesitate to. We also have another question here.
Okay, I can answer this one.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, when you have a physical production that it's homogeneous, like the case of the iron steel, the preference is to develop those indicators using the physical production, because as Sakia was explaining, you have less noise because of the price, for example, and also you don't have the noise of the inflation if you are using current prices, for example. So if you have an industry like the iron and steel, as you were saying, it's clear that a physical indicator would be better, maybe, or less noisy than one that is using value added. But in the case of the machinery, you have several production of machinery, so you have different machines that you are producing. So it's very difficult to have an indicator for each machine you are producing. In this case, and in those kind of subsectors, we like, for example, the chemical production as well, or the food and beverage subsectors, we use value added because it's very difficult for us or for anyone to collect data on the physical production because you produce many different products. So in this case, we use value added as a proxy. And for this value added, we try to make it only in volumes, what we call constant prices. So we also avoid the effect of the inflation, for example.
Thanks a lot, Victor. I hope this has answered your question, Yidesal. We have another question now, which is, what is the difference between energy efficiency and energy intensity? Sure,
that's a really good question. And the energy intensity is a very high level indicator. So the energy intensity, in fact, it's true that the energy efficiency takes part of the intensity, but it's not the only factor that affects energy intensity. So in the energy intensity, which is the energy per unit of GDP, you have the effect of the energy efficiency, but you also have the effect of the structural change of the economy. For example, you have the effect of the increasing or decreasing activity, like, for example, more population, people buying more cars, having bigger houses, but also other effects, like, for example, the climate. If summers are warmer, people are naturally going to use more energy. So the energy intensity, it's a very aggregated indicator, and therefore it not only includes energy efficiency. So in order to, for example, having more insights about a specific subsector, if we are doing this more efficiently, we need more detailed data, and the energy intensity is not enough to track energy efficiency. This is why what Sakia was explaining in the second question.
Thanks a lot, Victor. Please, if you have more questions, do not hesitate to take the floor, raise your hand, or write it down here in the Q&A box.
Also, if it's not clear, please let us know, and we can provide more examples or whatever is needed.
Yeah.
Maybe to come back on the first question, so it's not crystal clear to us what is asked, but I don't know if someone of you, Victor, Thomas, can maybe just say a bit more about how we can compare energy efficiency. Maybe it's about performances between countries, maybe it's about comparing across sectors. We're not sure about the question, but maybe we can start bringing some answers.
Yes, well, as you are saying, several ideas come to my mind reading this question, and one, it's about the possibility of creating a synthetic indicator, is what we call, and this, it's a common practice that, again, aggregates several indicators to be able to compare the efficiency improvement, let's say, from one country to another. This is something we are not currently doing because it's subject to a lot of methodological concepts, and it's not that transparent. So we prefer to publish the data and the indicators that are more clear, but it's something that is, of course, doable to create a synthetic indicator that could give you an idea of the energy efficiency improvement. And about international comparison, as you were saying, Arnaud, this is something really important, and that's why, for example, you saw the PPP conversion of the value added, because it's important that when we compare internationally energy intensity indicators, for example, that we are comparing in the same units, so we can actually compare this data.
Thanks a lot, Victor, for all this explanation. I think it would be good for us to hear from the participants what you're currently doing in Ethiopia on this front. Is there a possibility for further cooperation with the IEA? How can the IEA support you in this energy efficiency indicators data work? Please, if it's possible, raise your hand and tell us a bit more about what you're doing in your country, what challenges you're facing in the data collection for energy efficiency indicators. I'm just, putting out the questions that I have in my mind that with which we could have a discussion. Do you have specific surveys in place that collect detailed end-use data, for example? Please, if you can, and you know what is being done in Ethiopia, tell us. Take the floor and let us know. There's a very broad question that arrives on how do we improve energy efficiency? I don't know if Victor, you want to give some
about the question of how to improve energy efficiency.
Energy efficiency, yeah.
Well, it depends on where do you want to actually improve the energy efficiency. But if you are talking about energy efficiency as a whole, a good starting point is the data you can already find in balances. So, for example, to look at the energy balance in Ethiopia and say, okay, maybe 60% of this consumption is from the residential sector. So the residential sector might be a priority and a good starting point to identify where we can actually start applying some energy efficiency policies that could potentially end up saving some energy. So I would say that for improving energy efficiency, the first step is to actually know where to apply those energy efficiency policies and where we have this potential for energy savings and applying energy efficiency. And then once you have identified that, you could consult, for example, the best available technologies in one industrial subsector, or you can consult which policies have worked for other similar economies and apply similar measures, like, for example, the minimum standard performance in appliances. But the very, very important point and the starting point is to identify where to actually apply those policies and measures.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Victor. So we have a participant that has raised his hand.
Sure.
Please take the floor, Theodros. You can.
Sorry, I don't have the question, but
yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have the question.
Okay.
Mistake, I will read the hand.
No problem.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yes, so, for us, yeah, sorry.
Yes,
for
please go ahead.
Very useful, as Saki was saying, to know if you are doing a survey, for example, for the residential sector, or even what do you think is the most important sector or the one with more potential in your country for energy savings? In which one you have tried, for example, to collect some data, I don't know, for the transport sector? Which hurdles, which obstacles have you found at the point you were collecting this data? All those experiences are extremely interesting for us. So if you'd like to share them with us, we will be super happy about it.
Yes. So if there is no comments and no more question and answers, I would like to thank Victor, Thomas, and Young-Yu for having joined us and help us answer your questions. Now we'll move to the second part of the presentation, which is about energy prices. So energy prices, it reflects the global events, and the IEA energy prices database, it's one of the most requested deliverables. And this presentation that will follow now will allow you to better understand the relevance of energy prices. We'll see why it is so important to collect energy prices. We'll also look at some key statistical concepts on energy prices and also on comparability. After the presentation, we'll do the exercise that we have sent you yesterday on prices, and then it will be followed by a question and answer sessions with Domenico, who is our expert on energy prices in the at the IEA. So now I will share with you prices presentation.
Why are energy prices important? Energy prices are important because they affect our lives as consumers and the competitiveness of a private enterprise, and therefore the economy of our country. End users' energy prices are influenced by price movements in the raw commodity markets. For instance, crude oil spot price market. The international spot price market is in turn affected to major events such as economic developments or even natural disasters. In the graph, we can see the step price decreases caused by global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, and the oversupply in the market in year 2014. More recently, we can see the effect of the COVID pandemic on the market with the reduction of the price linked to the reduction of the consumption. But the cost of the raw material and the international markets doesn't capture the full story. In fact, the end-use price paid by consumers is subject to taxation that might represent the major share of the final prices. Why do governments tax energy commodities? The taxation of energy products may pursue different objectives. The first objective could be public revenue generation. In the short, medium term, energy demand is relatively inelastic, making energy products good targets for revenue generation. Another objective could be internalizing the environmental and health costs associated to emissions or other types of pollution. The third objective of taxation is to drive the change. High taxation on the most polluting fossil fuels can help shift consumption towards a less polluting and therefore less taxed energy commodities. Tracking energy prices is important also because they represent a significant share of our daily lives expenditures. For households, for example, the direct expenditure on energy might represent up to 17% of the household spending. The same can be applied to industry. Industry competitiveness is greatly affected by energy costs. This is true especially for energy-intensive processes, such as aluminum production, for which energy costs can represent around 40% of the production costs. For all those reasons, it is very important to track energy prices in our country and to have an international methodology that allows us to compare prices across the world. Here at the IEA, we track energy prices across the world in the Energy Prices database. The map on this slide shows gasoline prices across the world drawn from this database. An accurate database is the basis for conducting accurate and robust analysis on the energy scenario and for assessing the competitiveness of a country. Such data also allows for evidence-based policymaking and energy transition planning. Robust data allow to draw comparison to regional differences. For example, thanks to this dataset, we can say that consumers in Africa pays on average the gasoline 30% less than the average of the world and 50% less than European consumers. This dataset enables also further analysis such as the one showed with this graph. This graph illustrates gasoline price levels across countries based on GDP per capita, and it is taken from the IEA commentary on gasoline prices across the world. In this graph, we see that price levels are, in most countries, linked to the economic conjuncture of the country itself. Based on GDP per capita, we can identify 4 clusters of countries. Many developing countries fall in the cluster at the bottom left of the graph, since their governments often keep prices low to increase energy access. Please feel free to refer to the IEA commentary for further information and analysis on this topic. As mentioned before, it is important to have a common methodology for tracking energy price. This allows to have a solid international benchmark and comparable data. So let's now turn to the IEA methodology, which provides for such a common methodology and which has been adopted and used by other international organizations. End-use energy price is the sum of 2 subcomponents: ex-tax price and taxation, which is the sum of value-added tax and excise taxation. Having information on these components allows us to have a more solid understanding of the situation in the country and to draw policy implication and guide policy making. The ex-tax price includes all the costs incurred for producing the final product throughout the supply chain, except taxes. This includes the cost of raw materials, manufacturing costs, distribution costs, and profit. The excess taxation instead is generally levied on a volume basis and excludes the VAT component. This taxation might have different policy objectives and includes CO2 taxes, other environmental taxes, motor fuel taxes, emergency stock fees, and any other taxation applied to the commodity. And the last component is the VAT taxation. VAT taxation is a consumption tax on value added, and it is generally applied to the sum of the ex-tax price and excise taxation. As of 2020, over 170 countries had VAT or an equivalent taxes in place. To better understand each of those price components and how these can affect the end user price, let's have a look at a simple example of 2 hypothetical countries, A and B. Country A and country B have 2 different ex-tax prices for gasoline. This may depend on the different relative scarcity of the oil resources in the two countries, or on different refinery and distribution costs. The government in country A decided to implement a lower excise taxation compared to country B, maybe to compensate the high ex-tax price. Country A has also a lower VAT rate compared to country B. So overall, the total taxation on gasoline in country A is lower than in country B. If we apply the VAT rate to the sum of the ex-tax and excise taxation, we obtain the VAT amount, which is summed to the excise tax, gives us the total taxation for fuel. As mentioned, the total taxation in country A is lower than the one in country B, and this makes the end user price lower despite the higher costs along the supply chain. Now let's delve into the methodology to calculate representative end user prices. What is the representative price for a country? Energy prices may vary across regions and provinces of the same country. For example, this map shows more expensive gasoline prices in the western parts of the United States compared to the prices in the southeastern states. Again, using an example may help better understand. Let's consider a country, which we will call Statisland, with two provinces, Eastern Statisland and Western Statisland. In Eastern Statisland, the price of diesel is $0.5 per liter, while in Western Statisland, gasoline is more expensive at $1 per liter. Diesel consumption is 500 kiloliters in the Eastern Statisland and just 100 kiloliters in the Western Statisland. If we calculated the simple arithmetical average of the two prices, we would have a $0.75 per liter. Is this a representative price? The answer is no, because as we can see from the input data, consumption is 5 times higher in the region with a lower price. Therefore, if we were to compute the simple average, we would not take into account this difference in consumption. In order to calculate a representative price, we need to weigh prices by consumption. If we take consumption into account, we obtain $0.558 per liter, which is the representative price for the country. When calculating a representative price, another important concept is the difference between prices and tariffs. In the data collection undertaken for our data tracking, we are interested in the prices, namely the average rate per unit actually paid by the consumers, no matter what is the price structure for the commodity in the country. Again, let's take a look at an example, this time on electricity prices. We all know that in general, the electricity bill has two components, fixed charges and the variable charges. The fixed charges pay for the connection to the grid and it is not linked to the energy consumption. The variable component, on the contrary, is based on the quantity of energy consumed each month. In this case, to calculate the representative end user price for a user, we need to calculate the total electricity bill and divide it by the energy consumed. The total bill is the sum of fixed charges, 10 euros in this case, and the variable charges, which are 0.1 euros per kilowatt hour times 150 kilowatt hours. The total paid is 25 euros. The total now should be divided by the energy consumed, which is again 150 kilowatt hour. This gives the representative price for this consumer, which is 0.17 euros per kilowatt hour. To conclude, energy is an important component of our lives, and for the economic development of our countries. And energy is a significant expenditure for our budgets. A solid energy price tracking system, one that allows having comprehensive and comparable data, is a key requirement for evidence-based policymaking and policy choices to increase the energy affordability and foster a green and just transition. IEA stands ready to advise and support countries along this path. Please contact us to receive more information on how IEA can support your country develop more solid energy price tracking systems that will support sound and effective policy choices. Thank you.
I hope that this presentation on prices has helped you better understand the different components of end user prices, the statistical concepts, and the importance of collecting such prices information, whether it is to calculate your spendings or to calculate fossil fuel subsidies. Prices are a very important component for policy making. So now I will share again my screen. We'll do the Menti pool later, but now let's work on the exercise session that the exercise that we sent you yesterday. If you have any questions on the presentation that we just showed you, you can start putting it in the Q&A box. Domenico, our energy prices expert, will be here with us just after the exercise session to answer any question you have or to have a discussion with us. So let's go to the exercise. So the exercise is about three parts. It's on household, on industry, and on the power plants price calculation. So we give you the information on for household on the average spendings and their consumption. We gave you information on value added tax, excise tax, and the revenues from industry, consumers, how much gas was sold to industries, and for power plants, the average purchase price for natural gas. So the first question is, calculate the average natural gas price for household, industry, and electric utilities. So the yellow rows are what we would like you to fill out based on all the information on the left side here for household, taxes, and industry and consumers. And then we have a second question where we ask you to, based on the household information you have calculated here, we ask you to calculate the growth rate for 2010 to 2019, and then to think about if you use to compare the price, the growth rate, if you had adjusted for consumer price index and recalculate the growth rate based on these adjusted prices. So I give you a few seconds to look at this exercise if you haven't done it yet, and then we'll look at the solutions together. So with the information here, you have to start filling the different cells here so that you have all the information, ex-tax price, VAT, total tax price for household, same for industry, and same for the power plants here. So the first step is use all those information and fill it out here.
Sorry, Zakia, while people are thinking of the exercise, just to mention that if you have not received Please check your email. I think I sent to all people who registered to this course. So the email went out yesterday from my arnaud.rouget@iea.org email address. If you have not received, please flag it and send again your correct email address. Thank you very much.
Yes, do not worry if you haven't received it, we'll send it to you. So let's look at the solution now. So for household, how do we use the information here and feed it out here? The first information that we have is the average spending for heating and cooking by gas. So households spend 3,318 euros, and their average consumption of natural gas in megawatt hour gross calorific value is 2.4 megawatt hour. So with this information here, what can we fill out here? So we know the total price, because what's the total price is the total spending divided by your average consumption, which gives you that in 2019, household paid 1,360 euro for natural gas. So you know this information based on that information. Then you have information on taxes. So for value added tax, consumers paid 20%. So who pays VAT? VAT is paid only by household. So you know this amount here. You can already fill it out here. And you know also that for VAT, industries and power plants, they don't pay VAT. So here you can already put 0% here. I'm sorry. And then you have the information on excise tax. You know that consumers paid 31.9 euro for each megawatt hour GCV. Who pays excise tax? So households do not pay excise tax. You can already put a 0 here, but you know that industry and power plants do pay excise tax. So you see that you are able to already fill parts of the table. So now for household, you are missing your ex-tax price. You already know these two information and the total price. So your ex-tax price is the total price divided by 1 plus 20%. So you back calculate your ex-tax price based on the VAT amount that you know. So you get 1,133 euro as ex-tax price. Now that you know the ex-tax price, you can calculate your VAT amount because it's a percentage of your ex-tax price. Before, with the total price, you couldn't calculate your VAT amount. So your VAT amount is 20% of your ex-tax price. So this is done, and your total tax is excise tax plus your VAT amount, which gives you 227. So for household, we have been able to fill the table. Let's look at industry now. For industry, we know that the excise tax, we know the VAT amount. So VAT amount is 0 because there's no VAT percentage. So the total tax here is 32. We know based on the information here. Let's look at the green information here. We know that industrial consumers got 49.8 billion euros, and this is excluding excise tax. So here you already know the information about your ex-tax price, which is, and you know the amount of gas sold to industries. So you have both the information needed to calculate your ex-tax price, which is your revenue divided by the amount of gas sold. But here, this is in billion euros and this is in gigawatt hour, whereas here you're calculating your price in euro per megawatt hour. So you need to adjust the unit. So your ex-tax price is 49.8 divided by 55,189. So you have the ex-tax price, you have your total tax, so you can calculate your total price, which is ex-tax price plus total tax. So for an industry, we have all the information. Let's look at power plants now. What do we know about power plants? So all the tax amount, as for industry, you know. So what information do we have? We know that the average purchasing price of natural gas, excluding tax, is 735 megawatt hour NCV, net calorific value here. You need to pay attention to all information, whether on units or on which calorific value terms you're reporting, especially for natural gas, where the difference between the net calorific value and the gross calorific value, it's 10%. So it shows off in your data. So your ex-tax price, it's the average purchase price multiplied by 0.9. So you adjust it for the gross calorific value. So you know this amount, and so your total price will be your ex-tax price plus your total tax, which gives you your total price. Now the second question is about calculate the growth of the natural gas price between 2010 and 2019. So this here. So this is just a simple growth rate. You take your amount in 2019, you divide by your amount in 2010 and minus 1, you get your growth rate, which is 18%. So this is easy. Can you say that prices increased since 2010? If not, how could you modify the prices? So here, even though we know that the growth rate has increased by 18%, we cannot say that the prices have increased, because this comparison, it doesn't take into account the inflation, and so it deflated. And in this case, you need the consumer price index. Because we are looking at household, you need the consumer price index to calculate the proper, to make the proper adjustment and calculate the proper growth rate. So so what would be the price if you adjust it for the consumer price index? So you take your total price non-adjusted and you divide it by your consumer price index, by your price index. And this will give you the real price of your commodity. In this case here, it's gas. So now we know that in 2010, the real price of natural gas is 1,271 euro per megawatt hour. And for 2019, the real price is 1,204. So if you recalculate the growth rate based on your real price, you get a decline of 5%. So it's quite different from the nominal price growth rate, and you can see that this can really change your messages and your analysis of the data. So it's very important to adjust your price when you are making those analyses. I hope that this exercise is clear enough. And now we will go back to the presentation, and Domenico is here with us to answer any question you may have. Let me see if we have questions already in the
Yes, Zakia. Hi.
Yeah, we have
Hello.
a first question.
I saw the question. The question was about tariffs. So happy to meet you virtually, and thanks for the question. I I see that the question was about the difference between tariffs and prices. So I think that it's important here to understand the rationale behind those data collection. So the idea is to have prices that can be compared across countries and can be used as a benchmark from one country to the other. So for specific cases like natural gas and electricity, those are the cases in general that pose more challenges to this. We have some kind of price structure at the end user level where there is a fixed component which is paying for the connection to the grid, either the electricity or the natural gas, and a variable component, which is in general the tariff, what we call the tariff, that pays for the energy, actually energy consumed. We want to have, depending on this structure, the total bill for those commodities can be unbalanced toward the fixed cost or the energy cost. And if we focus only on tariff, we wouldn't capture this difference. Let's say in country A, we have a country where the fixed costs are 80% of the total bill, and in country B, the fixed costs are 20% of the total bill. If we look only at the tariff, we would have not the real picture of what's happening in the country. So the idea behind the database is to have a price which is the total sales revenues divided by the total energy sold. So this is the general concept. And anytime, I think this is something that is easier to see in the countries, because in general there are the transmission operators that are providing this data, and that they tell us what the revenues for the consumption and the total quantity of energy sold. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I saw you frozen. Okay, so this is in general the concept that we are using, and I don't know if it was clear. So the idea is really to have how much the households are paying for the unit of energy, which is the liter of gasoline in the case of gasoline, and the kilowatt hour in case of the electricity, and megawatt hour in case of the natural gas. So really the representative price.
Thanks, Domenico. So I hope, Linda, that Domenico's answer was clear to you. Do not hesitate to let us know if you need more information. We have some other questions about whether you will receive a soft copy. Yes, so we will send you, we will share with you the links to have access to all the presentation. And for the exercise, we will share with you at the end of the training a booklet which contains all the solutions as well. Please, if you have more questions, take advantage that we have Domenico, our expert on energy prices, with us today to help you understanding better the concepts.
Yes, if I may add something, it will be interesting for us. We had already some conversation with relevant stakeholders in your country. We do this data collection, the data collection on world energy prices based on research, basically, and we use official sources to retrieve data. And so we would be more than happy to get in contact with you, or to work on this subject and to understand better what is collected actually in your country, what are your methodologies, and if you want to collaborate with us to have more representative prices for your country in the database. We really think that this database is really comprehensive, it's a recent database in the end, but really we were able to strengthen the data collection, and right now covering a lot of countries in the world. We are around 135 countries in the world. And so having your country well represented in the database, I think it has a value, because then this database is used by other countries, and also by you can get the access to the full data set and be able to compare your prices with the neighbor countries or with the entire world. So I think this is representative. We have a recent work with India, for example, that they were trying and implementing a new tariff reform, and then they started from an analysis done based on our database. So I think it has a value, having a homogeneous methodology and having your price in the database.
Thanks, Domenico. We have two more questions. There's the first one on where does subsidy fit in the price structure? If you want, I can answer this one.
I mean, in the methodology, if I may, Zakia,
yeah,
then you can add something on the.
Yeah, sure.
So in the methodology, of course, the methodology was born for OECD countries where subsidies are not in place for most of the time. I think completely, and then but we can take into account the subsidy. And for us, the subsidy is a negative excise taxation. This might happen also in OECD countries. For example, we have Chile doing something like this. It has a floating excise taxation, and for different shocks in the price in the international markets, they have a compensating excise taxation, which is also can become also a subsidy. And then in the last year with the COVID crisis, they had this excise taxation becoming a subsidy. So we do take into account this, the subsidies under the excise taxation, doing the net taxation on the product. And another example that might help your understanding, we have worked with OLADE, so which is the organization for South America, and they have developed a similar methodology, starting actually from our methodology. So it's completely consistent. This is good news. And they had the breakdown also the subsidy, because it's more relevant in the region. And yes, they had excise taxation, and on the side also subsidy. So they don't work with the net taxation as we do, but they have a specific place for subsidies. But of course, also in our methodology, we can include subsidies. Please, Zakia, sorry.
Yes, I mean, you answered it very well. There are different kinds of subsidies. Some are for the producers, so then it will be reflected in the ex-tax price already. And there are some subsidies for consumers, and this is what Domenico explained to you, that would be reflected in the different taxes reduction that consumers put in place, so that the end user pays a lower price. There's another question, Domenico, on quality versus price. It's quite broad.
Yeah, it's broad. If I take it in this way, and please let me know. I would like to understand more from the participant. I am thinking about gasoline quality, different gasoline qualities. This is something, I don't know if the participant was referring to Mr. Adwalem. So if this is the case, in the database, we have different prices for different quality grades of gasoline. We have 3 grades, regular, medium, and high grades. And so we try to keep aside to distinguish between those prices, because of course the price of gasoline depends on the quality, and not in all countries you have all the qualities. But of course, we have the different baskets where we put the different prices. I don't know, I would invite to, if it was not this the question, I would like invite to Adwalem to write more.
Yeah. Please let us know if it's clear for you, if that was what you meant. And for other participants, please, if you have more questions, do not hesitate to raise your hand. And if you have information to share with us about your prices system in your country, what the challenges you're facing for prices, data collection, for example, please. We have another. So the participant is asking about electricity. What about the quality of service for electricity?
Okay, I see. I agree. This is the quality of the electricity grid is a parameter which is, I mean, well debated in the international community, energy international community, and it has of course a lot of sense having those quality indicators for the grid. From the price point of view, this is hard to track because this would mean to weigh the price based on the quality of the grid, which is already another indicators, and we might find a lot of different indicators on the grid quality, because you have the reliability, you have also the quality of the electricity in the grid. So there are a lot of parameters in this quality services. Right now, we are not capturing those quality metrics in the database. We are really looking only at prices and the end user prices that the households or the industry is facing when connecting to the grid. And then if the connection is not so stable and the connection is not reliable, this is something that we cannot track under the prices database at this moment.
Thanks, Domenico. We have another question. Can energy price directly related with electricity price in the case of Ethiopia?
I mean, if we can see a trend, I think maybe it's related to energy price related with electricity price in case of. It's not so clear to me. This I think I take it as can energy prices for different commodities influence electricity price in Ethiopia. I think it's this the idea. Of course, we can having different commodities within the same database with a same structure. We can see if a shock in price in one commodity is reflected in other commodities. In general, of course, electricity prices are a consequence of depending on the country, but like in coal prices in the international market, natural gas prices in the international market, and also the penetration of renewables in the country. So of course, they are a second order. It can be influenced by international prices. Of course, in the electricity price, a lot also comes from the grid. So the services that we are paying for the reliability of the grid. And so not always a big shock in price of the raw commodities is then reflected in the final price. For example, in Italy, in Italy, the production is a lot based on gas, and okay, it goes down the price when the gas is low, but the price doesn't go down that much because, of course, all the main share of the end user cost, end user price is the connection to the grid, and this represents a lot of the price and the taxation, because you can have electricity, mainly electricity is taxation. So yes, it is linked, but then the final price really has small variations. And again, please follow up the anonymous attendees I read if this was not really exactly what you meant.
There's another question from Awash. How can realize the product and energy efficiency as well as the emission in industry? I'm not sure I understand this question. Can you please clarify your question, Awash?
Awash, maybe we can give you the floor so that you speak and explain a bit more what you want to touch on.
Yeah.
And just to mention on emissions, so there was in last August a webinar on how to calculate and estimate CO2 emissions from the energy sector and different subsectors, including industry. So you can check the video and the presentation on this topic as well.
Yes. And the problem of energy efficiency in industry, it's true that especially for heavy industries, there's a lot of improvement to be done on the material use, on the type of plants improvement to be done. So indeed, industry is a big sector where we can do energy efficiency improvement. I think that if we don't have more, so there's another question: how can we reduce the energy in industry? Well, there are many ways you can reduce the amount of energy used in industries. First, if you use, less energy intensive materials, but it really depends on the country. If you're a country that is in development, it's quite normal that you use, as you're developing your industry sector, you're developing your country, then you have a more energy intensive industry. But as you reach a certain level of development, then usually you shift away from industry and move towards developing the services sector. So there's there's less energy consumed. And another way to reduce the amount of energy used in industry is, what can I say, to improve your technologies, use better technologies, so you produce more with less energy. Yeah, so I think we have 1 minute left before the end of this session. If there's no more question, I think I would like to thank you all for your attention for the past 2 hours, and please get back to us by email if you want more clarification on any on energy efficiency indicators or prices or any of the previous statistical sessions that we have done. So we will be happy to reply to you and exchange with you on those topics.
And maybe to mention, we'll see you tomorrow morning, same time, so 10:30 at this time, to turn to energy modeling and modeling tools for long-term planning. And we will illustrate how we can make projections on how the demand for energy will evolve. And we'll take the sector of buildings, which is about residential and services. So looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. We will also have some experts from the IEA modeling team. And I will just send right now an exercise on energy modeling for the building sector with questions. We invite you to have a look at it. And if you have not received emails, please express yourself on the WhatsApp group or on email so that we are sure we have the right email address.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a nice day. Bye.